Homage to fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni. Homage to wisdom warrior Manjushri. Homage to all lineage benevolent masters. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in a million eons. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, generate supreme bodhicitta. We continue studying the sufferings of human beings in the words of my perfect teacher. Now we discuss the third, of birth, aging, sickness, and death, the suffering of illness. The human body is composed of the four elements by nature. When the four elements are imbalanced, one inevitably suffers various torments from wind, bile, phlegm, and other diseases causing immense distress. The human body, as we all know, is composed of the four elements. When the four elements are imbalanced, or as some Tibetan medical tantras explain, our beginningless attachment, anger, and ignorance become the three root diseases of wind, bile, and phlegm. Some sutras mention 84,000 diseases, while others speak of 404 types of illnesses. For example, the treatise on the great perfection of wisdom states that the perfection of wisdom can also cure 84,000 diseases. The 84,000 diseases are divided into 21,000 diseases caused by attachment, 21,000 diseases caused by anger, 21,000 diseases caused by ignorance, and 21,000 diseases caused by the equal combination of attachment, anger, and ignorance, totaling 84,000 diseases. The Mahasangha Vinaya mentions 404 types of diseases, 101 water diseases, 101 wind diseases, 101 fire-related diseases, and 101 miscellaneous diseases, totaling 404 diseases. There are various such explanations. In any case, when the human body becomes imbalanced, various diseases manifest with different classifications. For instance, traditional Chinese medicine often speaks of diseases caused by external factors, such as the 6 pathogenic influences of cold, heat, dampness, etc. Internal causes include the 7 emotions: joy, anger, worry, pensiveness, and so forth. There are also diseases caused by neither internal nor external factors, such as diet or accidents or wild animal attacks and other unexpected incidents. This is what I've seen explained in Chinese medical texts. The principles explained in Chinese medical texts are similar to those in the sutras. The Golden Light Sutra also mentions 3 types of causes. One is the factors of the sense faculties, another is dietary factors, and the third is factors related to the 4 seasons and different climatic periods. I think these 2 systems should correspond to each other. Originally, the Golden Light Sutra states, when the 4 elements and sense faculties deteriorate and transform, various diseases arise. When our 4 elements and faculties weaken, various diseases manifest. And so there are different explanations for the sources and causes. Everyone present should understand this clearly, especially those who have studied traditional Chinese medicine, Western medicine, or Tibetan medicine. They all have different descriptions and analyses of disease origins, the nature of various illnesses, and the suffering they ultimately produce. First, some diseases arise from harming or striking sentient beings in past lives due to such karmic connections. Others arise in this life due to external factors like seasonal changes, such as not adapting well to spring, summer, autumn, and winter climates, causing one's 4 elements to become disordered. So diseases arise from various karmic conditions combined. Now, when we need to treat these diseases, some can be cured through medical treatment, and some can be healed through the blessings of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas' mantras and sacred names. In modern medicine, I once saw a survey by the World Health Organization stating that humanity has approximately 30,000 types of diseases, of which about 10,000, 1/3, can be treated. 1/3 of diseases can now be prevented, treated, or controlled by modern medicine. The other 20,000 plus diseases remain beyond the reach of current medicine. So when we fall ill, of course, some conditions, no matter which hospital we go to in this lifetime, what kind of doctor we see, or what medicine we take, may not necessarily be effective or completely curable for various reasons. When a disease truly cannot be treated, there's no need to feel especially distressed. Originally, many things in this world have distant and near karmic conditions. Some distant karmic conditions could be said to be from past lives or this lifetime or even earlier past lives, countless eons of various karmic conditions remain stored in your alaya consciousness. Even in this lifetime, there are countless extremely complex karmic conditions. So when people experience bodily imbalance and various sufferings, examining and contemplating cause and effect relationships is very important. This is called spiritual practice. Truly, spiritual practice is especially important for people with some level of spiritual realization, whether physical or mental. Any external obstacles to practice or hardships in daily life can be resolved effortlessly. If one lacks such realization and relies completely on material means such as depending on medicine and drugs to eliminate one's suffering, some cases may be beyond remedy. Some people wholeheartedly seek the blessings of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, but the blessings of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas can descend upon some beings while for beings without karmic connection. The blessings of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas also face certain difficulties. When the Buddha was alive, there were many seriously ill patients. The Buddha could only give them blessings. Beyond that, there was no other way. There are also cases where through the blessings of the Buddha, other bodhisattvas or great masters, complete healing occurs. Such phenomena are quite common, so we should understand the sources of illness. Now, what is it like when one falls ill? Even those who are energetic, glowing with health, spirited and capable in their prime, once they unfortunately contract a disease, become like a bird struck by a stone, physically weakened and exhausted, listless, even bedridden with even slight physical movement becoming very difficult. Many Dharma friends are physically well and mentally strong in all aspects, strength and everything very good. But once they fall ill, indeed like a large stone striking a small bird, it becomes motionless and dies immediately. When we contract an illness, it's the same. Not to mention major illnesses, even a minor disease, a headache, cold or discomfort in the heart or liver. Once your body contracts a disease, you have no strength or courage whatsoever. I recently saw a great master who previously was physically fine in all respects, but after seeing him, I truly felt the terror and frightfulness of illness arise spontaneously in my heart. Oh, indeed. When this illness strikes in the world, no matter who it is, once they contract it, no one can face it unless some have especially high realization who are free and at ease, indifferent, transforming all illness into the path. But even if some people have such realization in appearance, including the Buddha himself, they still manifest birth, aging, sickness, and death. So I think worldly people should first understand Buddhist truth, not only understand it in words, but truly feel birth, aging, sickness, and death in their hearts. Once you have this feeling, when you contract an illness, you feel like a bird struck by a stone, now unable to move, with any slight movement being impossible. At this time, you truly develop unwavering faith in the Buddha's infallible teachings. When you're sick and others ask where it hurts, you don't even have the ability to answer quickly, speaking weakly and feebly. When asked where it hurts, I'm in so much pain, I don't know where I'm particularly I can't go on anymore. You no longer even have the courage to respond. Some Dharma friends might be naturally timid, though their illness isn't that severe. Usually when doing things, they say, my body can't handle it. But once it's time to eat, their eyes open wide and they seem quite well. During sleep, they toss and turn. No matter how they lie down, there's never a comfortable position. Sleepless nights after falling ill, no matter how they sleep, lie or rest, nothing works. It's particularly distressing. Moreover, they feel that daytime and nighttime hours are extremely long, truly like years passing as days. Especially those patients plagued by illness, with chronic diseases lasting a very long time, life becomes worse than death. Truly, living seems unnecessary. Finally, they feel extremely painful and heartbroken. The Buddha indeed spoke extensively about the suffering of illness in the sutras. Worldly people who have never studied the suffering of illness before, once they encounter such suffering themselves, they cannot face it. So those who have gained some real benefit from Mahayana Buddhist teachings indeed have a clear understanding of illness and life. This point, I feel, is especially important for us to face life in this existence. I think many people should contemplate what human life is really like. If you haven't even understood this point, I'm afraid there will be certain difficulties in your entire study and practice. Here it describes that when sick, one loses appetite and doesn't want to eat or drink. During this process, although completely unwilling, In utterly helpless circumstances, one must still taste the bitter and astringent flavors of medicine, Chinese medicine, Tibetan medicine, originally unwilling. When the body is healthy, one doesn't want to take medicine at all, but when the body is unwell, and one has been sick for some time, no matter how bitter the medicine, one is willing to take whatever effects it has. There are also the sufferings of bloodletting, moxibustion, acupuncture, and other painful treatments. I remember when I was in Xiamen, every day was like undergoing a small surgical procedure on the spine, using a small needle to continuously pierce when it went in. I couldn't help but cry out, "Ah!" Each time I went, I was alone. If I brought familiar people along, I was afraid that after my health recovered, others would never forget my timidity, including when I was hospitalized in Chengdu for some time, what they called small needle knife surgery. It was like a small knife being inserted into the spine, as if it had penetrated into the bone marrow. I underwent this many times, although unwilling. There was no choice. Hoping for some improvement, so when many of us are required by hospitals to have surgery, though unwilling and very frightened for the final hope, even if living just one more day, we're willing to undergo surgery. Truly, samsara is indeed of such a suffering nature. Everyone should first deeply contemplate these principles after contemplation, whether it happens to others or oneself once it occurs. If one can completely transform it into the path, the suffering of illness, especially these experiences when they appear in ordinary people, are very difficult to endure. But generally speaking, if theory and practice are combined over time, one understands that what the sutras describe is precisely this suffering of illness. Now I must accept it, and I completely have the capacity to accept it. The Buddha states in the Sutra of the Right Mindfulness of Dharma, "The suffering of illness harms human life. Illness is the messenger of the Lord of Death. Sentient beings endure this suffering. This suffering is indescribable." Previously, Khenpo Sodargye would read each scriptural citation twice generally. Those with good memory could remember it immediately. The Sutra of the Right Mindfulness of Dharma explains that the suffering of illness for sentient beings is inconceivable indeed. When you haven't fallen ill, you cannot see it. When you yourself fall ill or go to a hospital, then you know the true training ground for the suffering of illness that the Buddha taught is in hospitals, seeing some elderly people for survival, to live forever some, even though they're not sick because of their advanced age, probably can't do much that day in a Chengdu hospital. I saw an elderly person of about 80 preparing for surgery. The doctor told him, "Your overall physical condition is particularly poor now. It's better not to have surgery, just go home and rest." But the elderly person strongly insisted, "I must have it done, I must live to 90. Probably the doctors all thought it wouldn't work, looking at his physical condition. We thought surgery probably wouldn't work. I'm not a doctor, just a passerby watching from the side, but his hope was great. Wanting to continue living as practitioners, we should truly be much stronger than many intellectuals. I have this feeling, thinking that through this serious illness, death might come suddenly for this reason. One becomes terrified and extremely frightened each time one falls ill. One worries that perhaps this time there will be no more opportunity, and one will leave the world forever." Everyone has this kind of worry during the process of illness. Due to being controlled by demonic obstacles or negative conditions, many confused phenomena appear in dreams and during the day, making body and mind unable to control themselves. Truly confusion within confusion. There are also many cases of those who therefore seek to end their lives and commit suicide, because when one is sick, there are external demons, one's own illness demons, and various confused phenomena. Appearing originally, one had spiritual realization and was doing well in all respects, but at that time one seems particularly frightened and crazed, unable to control oneself. Some truly cannot accept this suffering and choose suicide. So patients indeed have many categories of suffering when you go to a hospital. You understand that everyone's suffering from illness is varied, of course. Sentient beings have created too much karma. I often think this way. If one has harmed many sentient beings, the karma created, for example, if some beings have harmed other beings' heads, then you get headaches that doctors cannot cure. If some beings have harmed the waist or other parts, when this karmic retribution manifests, one must endure it. So our frequent illnesses are the karmic result of striking other beings. Sudden death is the karmic result of killing other beings. The Sutra on Cause and Effect also explains it this way. I remember during the Buddha's time, there was a monk who contracted a disease and many monks ignored him completely. Later, the Buddha personally went to him because the patient's body was particularly foul-smelling. Many people dared not approach or were unwilling to approach at that time. The Buddha personally attended to him, washing and bathing his wounds and painful areas, continuously caring for him. Later, some people asked what the reason was. The Buddha said that on one hand, sick beings are extremely pitiful. The Sangha must care for patients. They are especially pitiful. There's also another reason. He and I had some different karmic connections in past lives. And described some past life karmic connections between himself and the patient, because this monk had previously whipped others very severely. So on one hand, each of us now, while our bodies are healthy, should repent well in this life or past lives. I may have struck many beings, then certainly I will have illnesses life after life in the future. Why do some Dharma friends take Chinese medicine every day, becoming medicine jars? Taking Chinese medicine, Western medicine every day, but never getting better. Why? It's definitely inseparable from our past life karma. Everyone should understand this point. If one contracts leprosy or serious conditions like cerebral hemorrhage, being alive is almost no different from being dead, expelled from human groups. One also sees oneself as walking dead completely, no different from a corpse. Previously, in 1986, when Dharma King went to many places in Tibet in the Dawu area, there was a group of leprosy patients. At that time, our teacher performed some Buddhist rituals for them from a distance, but when we looked at everyone's mood and their condition, they seemed no different from dead people except that their bodies were still moving, extremely pitiful. That day, I read a book called Years by author Cheng Xiangyang. It wrote about a place in Henan that had an AIDS village. He collected materials for about 10 years and finally wrote about the various sufferings of AIDS, how many people in their entire village contracted this disease, including his wife and family members. The writing was quite truthful, though his education was just middle school. Later, during a phone conversation with him, he said, "Outsiders simply don't understand the specific suffering conditions in our village." At that time, during the International Charity Forum, someone who was committed to helping treat them also participated. After I learned about it, they also requested that I go. I was prepared to go, but later time was particularly tight, so it was impossible. I requested some Dharma friends from Beijing Bodhi study group to go there and see, to help them. Later they went. So sometimes when we see these situations, people who have truly contracted terminal illnesses with no hope seem no different from being dead. At this time, if one is a practitioner, one should face it with equanimity. When you go to the hospital and the examination report comes out, the doctor looks and says, "Oh, right. You don't need to take medicine anymore and you don't need to stay in the hospital. Go home." Some patients strongly request, "I want to stay in the hospital." The doctor says, no problem, you don't have any illness." At that time, it indicates it's probably already late stage, it's already too late. So when everyone receives their examination report, you should still observe the doctor's expression. Whether they will call your family members over after you leave. If this happens, you should follow behind and eavesdrop a bit. In any case, patients with serious conditions cannot even take care of themselves. They become irritable and angry, flying into rage at the slightest provocation, finding fault with everything others do. Their character becomes much more stubborn and obstinate than before. Some people, when they fall ill, previously had good tempers in all respects when they can't take care of themselves and others come to care for them. Not only do they not comply, they often scold people. Previously in our academy, there were many patients. Our class or district managers would arrange people to take turns caring for them. Some had particularly bad tempers, scolding people every day. Then many people who originally had great bodhicitta later developed aversion, felt particularly uncomfortable, and left. Actually, sometimes as caregivers, we should also understand, after people fall ill, due to the imbalance of the four elements, their mood becomes particularly irritable, finding everything displeasing, they don't want to eat, and some patients have particularly high demands for food. I once heard of a patient whose demands were particularly high. "You must stir-fry 3 or 4 dishes for me." If the demands are too high for those helping her, there are still certain difficulties. Actually, after falling ill, if someone helps and cares for you, you shouldn't make excessive demands on others, otherwise everyone will develop aversion if time goes on long. The caregivers also cannot maintain their patient care as before. So normally, when we ourselves fall ill, we should think like what's described in the biographies of some great Kadampa masters. "May I alone bear all the suffering of illness of all sentient beings." If one truly knows how to practice, getting sick is a good thing for them. There are opportunities for practice every day. Especially when their pain is extremely intense, the more they contemplate and practice, the more successful they become. This is very good if practice is not very successful, or when ordinary people fall ill, they may cause a lot of trouble for those around them. Some people know this themselves, being bedridden for half a year, having others care for them for half a year. Then they themselves think, it would be better if I died earlier. Otherwise, I'm constantly troubling so many people, including their own family members and relatives. Some patients can neither die nor live, so this is also very painful. In any case, from such circumstances, we fully understand the true meaning of the suffering of illness that the Buddha proclaimed as patience. They constantly endure the torment of illness and suffer immensely. When everyone contemplates the suffering of illness, I feel that as patients, through their own experiences, understanding, and feelings, they should understand the profound principles explained in the sutras, especially after reading the Sutra of the Right Mindfulness of Dharma, Precious Garland, The Way of the Bodhisattva, and many other treatises. When one also repeatedly contemplates, indeed, for people living in this world, illness is a great suffering, one will understand the meaning within. Next we discuss the fourth issue, the suffering of death. When people reach their final moments, lying in bed, unable to rise, seeing food and drink without any interest, suffering the devastation of death, becoming melancholy and unhappy, losing their former fearless courage and invincible arrogance. What awaits ahead are confused appearances. Some people who were previously excellent in all respects, when they reach their final death or when they're on the sickbed, truly unable to get up, unable to eat, unable to walk, everything has become all external pleasures and beautiful environments. Whatever kind of objects appear, you remain completely indifferent. When your entire body fails, even if someone comes to you and tells jokes, is that so? Okay. Is that so? They just pretend to smile. But there's no way the inner suffering, no matter what finally manifests externally, there's no way around it. Previously, having great courage and strength, at that time, there's truly no way. I saw an article about a graduate student from a school who was originally an optimist, but later, for various reasons, he thought about human death. He probably wasn't a Buddhist. When he thought about death after people die, everything vanishes into thin air. Nothing remains. Thinking this way, he recalled this terror. Now I seek the happiness of life. Once I die, nothing will remain. He also thought about his parents, grandmother, grandfather, and all his family members. They all couldn't escape this law and eventually died. Thinking about this was particularly terrifying, so he went around asking, is there anyone in the world who can help me eliminate my worries and suffering? There was such a graduate student. We also very much want to tell him through studying Buddhism that actually after people die, consciousness is not destroyed. It still exists. Moreover, your consciousness, following good and evil karmic effects, continuously wanders in this samsara. But now most people, when they think about death, try their best not to consider this point, trying to divert this thinking. Quite a number of people are like this. Some people cannot help but think about it when they think about death. It's particularly frightening, but there's no way around it when the final moment of death arrives. Although relatives and friends surround you on all sides, it's also impossible to delay your time of death. At this time, only the dying person alone experiences the inconceivable suffering of the dissolution of breath. So when people leave this world, no matter how many relatives and friends surround you, there's no way to help. The Way of the Bodhisattva also states, at the moment of final departure, though surrounded by relatives, the pain of severed life, I alone must bear. When life is severed, all suffering is experienced by oneself alone. Not to mention ordinary worldly people, even teachers with thousands of followers, or presidents of countries with tens of millions or hundreds of millions of people. When they depart, they too experience all the suffering of death alone. It's impossible for others to bear it for them. In the Infinite Life Sutra, people in this world, amidst love and desire, are born alone, die alone, depart alone, come alone. People in this world, indeed, your life, your birth and death, all must be faced individually. When you fall ill, no matter how many people want to help, there's no way. Sometimes in hospitals I see some leaders who are quite good when they're hospitalized. Many particularly luxurious high-end cars come to escort them, but when they're hospitalized, only a few bodyguards help carry some clothes, bags, computers. Beyond that, no one can bear it for them. No matter what kind of treatment is done, there's no way death is also like this. These principles should be understood. They're very important for practitioners. Even though one possesses immeasurable wealth, family members, and so forth, one cannot take away even a penny or a single servant. Although the heart finds it difficult to let go, they cannot possibly accompany one. When death arrives, no one can benefit you. The way of the bodhisattva states, when seized by Mara's messengers, what benefit are relatives and friends? When the army of death comes before you and seizes you, your relatives and friends, no matter how many or how powerful, can provide no help or assistance whatsoever to the dying person. So when people are alive, truly practicing virtue is the only and most important thing. Once death arrives, nothing else is of any use. Whatever status you have, whatever wealth you possess, these are indeed useless. When we study and contemplate, everyone probably hears this often, but if the Dharma hasn't merged with your heart, you might think, oh, it's just talk. But when you truly have to face that day of death, you'll feel, oh, now all my wealth is left behind in this world. None of my friends can help in any way. After you die, they might be sad for 2 or 3 days and hold a ceremony. Then your body turns to nothing and disappears. Arafat, who previously won the Nobel Prize, I saw a short documentary about him. At that time, he was in his 70s. He was previously very prominent, receiving various peace awards around the world. When he was in his 70s, his wife was about 30. People often said his wife often ignored him. She enjoyed various lifestyles in France, dressing up and so forth. There were various accounts. When he was approaching death, he insisted on moving from Arab countries to France and died in a French hospital. When he was dying, all the officials and high-level leaders were helpless. They pushed him into the hospital for emergency treatment. The emergency treatment was the same as for ordinary people. On the surface, it looked like what Chinese people do, administering oxygen. The nurses also began pressing and massaging. Because his belly was quite large, many nurses were pressing. No way. Finally, they pushed him out. Dead, finished, then there was nothing, especially at that time recalling the evil deeds one committed in the past, especially those who believe in cause and effect when death arrives. Thinking about the evil karma they created, while alive they feel truly heartbroken, anxious as if on fire, extremely sad. Thinking about the suffering of the lower realms fills them with terror. Death comes so suddenly, catching one completely off guard. One feels utterly desolate. Some people truly have no way out when they come out of the hospital or have reached the final stage they themselves know. Oh, impermanence has come. The Ksitigarbha Sutra also states, the great ghost of impermanence arrives unexpectedly. The great demon of impermanence, so you haven't made an appointment with it, but suddenly it comes. When it suddenly arrives, you're helpless. At this time, many people should have this feeling. However, some practitioners are relatively better. I mentioned this before, didn't I? There was an old lama at our academy who contracted liver cancer. I helped take him to the hospital, Barkham Hospital. After examination, they said it was late stage, hopeless. He didn't understand Chinese very well, but from the doctor's expression, he completely understood. He said, "What did the doctor say?" I said, "Nothing serious, don't worry. Perhaps we should go back and take Chinese medicine. That would be better." Then he said, "Probably not. Let's go back. As a practitioner, there's nothing to worry about. You should just tell me directly." Later on the road, we still didn't tell him directly, but he seemed different from ordinary people. If it were others, they might be particularly sad upon hearing this news, but on the way back, from his complexion and all aspects, everything was very normal. His expression unchanged. So people with spiritual realization are probably somewhat better, but without realization, at that time, one becomes sad. The scene of survival thus vanishes like a mirage. Thinking of these things, how can one not feel despair, anxiety, and unbearable suffering? If one is heavily laden with sin at their final moments, recalling the evil karma created before, killing beings, harming beings, and so forth at this time, Fearing a fall into the lower realms, recalling when they were free, they fail to practice Dharma beneficial for the time of death they truly regret beyond remedy. Their heart feels indescribable pain. They can't help but scratch their chest with their hands, resulting in deep nail marks on their chest as they conclude their life. Especially those who previously had some faith in Buddhism and acknowledged the existence of future lives after death. Various sufferings will torment them, the karma they created before, as they approach death closer and closer. They remember at this time they feel particularly sad, thinking of the sins they committed. I once saw a person who during his lifetime often hunted, killing many wild animals and beasts. When approaching death, he was particularly sad, finally knowing he couldn't save himself. At that time, he continuously spoke from his mouth, "I killed so many and so many beings. Actually, they appear before me like this and that." We who heard these words beside him felt particularly terrified. So some people heavily laden with sin when about to approach death, it's indeed particularly frightening. Milarepa's teachings say, if you see sinful people dying, they are excellent teachers showing cause and effect. If we see some heavily sinful people dying, they truly are excellent spiritual friends, teaching us the infallibility of cause and effect. You don't need other spiritual friends daily teaching you the preliminary practices and the Sutra of 100 Actions. If you are truly a wise person watching some heavily sinful people when they die, their terror and sadness can be completely observed. At that time you know, oh, truly, when people are alive, they cannot create too much karma. If too much karma is created, not to mention future life suffering, this fear at the time of death in this very life is extremely frightening. So here it also explains when a person is at their last breath, messengers of the lower realms have already come before them. They themselves begin to speak. Ox-headed and horse-faced beings and various hell gods appear before them. All the beings they previously killed frequently appear in their confused perceptions and begin grabbing them. All scenes are extremely terrifying. All experiences only generate suffering. The four elements of the body withdraw. Breathing becomes difficult, gasping for breath, limbs trembling, consciousness confused, eyes rolling back white, motionless and stiff. At this time, it indicates they have left the human world. We look at their eyes. Some die with one eye closed. Dead, dead. Om Mani Padme Hum. If there are relatives nearby, they start crying, woo, woo, woo. There's no way. Everyone will face this when seized by death, departing to another world. In the Sutra of the Right Mindfulness of Dharma, death is the greatest suffering. People are seized by death from that moment, leaving this world and going to another world. At that time, there will certainly be various different sufferings. So if we ourselves have some spiritual realization when you truly experience the dissolution of the four elements or various confused appearances, there are quite many pith instructions in the secret teachings, especially in the Bardo practices. These pith instructions have extremely superior methods of transformation compared to any other sutra or any other worldly teaching. If we have previously practiced some particularly excellent tantric realizations, how your consciousness merges at that time, these processes are also explained very clearly. The entire process of the dissolution of your four elements is also explained particularly clearly, so generally speaking, from my own understanding. Indeed, those who practice Vajrayana differ from other practitioners because during their lifetime, many principles have already been prepared and understood. When confused phenomena appear one by one for most people, they can grasp the opportunity themselves. We have some analogies. For example, a very honest person, when he's leaving, if you give him a message to carry, he'll remember it and pay close attention. Similarly, when we leave this world and go to another world, the crucial issues on the road at that time will naturally come to mind at that moment. For example, if we leave here and take a train to another city, if he's never taken a train before, his parents tell him in a while at the train station how to buy tickets, how to board. After boarding, the seats are like this and that, explaining everything clearly in advance. When each situation appears, he'll remember everything his parents told him before. So if spiritual friends have explained everything to him one by one while alive, then when all the various scenes of death appear before him, he can implement and practice each one. So I feel regarding facing death originally, the Pure Land School also has many teachings, Buddha recitation. But the Pure Land School's pith instructions are not particularly numerous, often exclusively visualizing Amitabha Buddha. but beings' faculties differ. Not everyone can completely manifest Amitabha Buddha, so in the secret teachings there are many Bardopith instructions for different faculties. Having some recognition of these during our lifetime, this point I feel is especially important. With the arrival of Yama's messengers, all the states of the intermediate state appear one by one. At that time, one is truly without refuge or protection, alone and helpless. One can say naked and empty-handed, leaving this world and going to another world. Some practitioners are free and at ease. During the Tang dynasty, there was someone called Master Bao Fu. It seems to be mentioned in the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. One day, he told all his disciples, "My energy seems insufficient now. It's time to go." At this time, his disciples, some said, "Master, your body is very healthy. You won't leave." Some said, "To guide us, to teach us. You should still remain in the world for a long time." Some disciples said, "Your remaining in the world to teach Dharma to beings is very necessary." While everyone had different opinions, one disciple said, "No problem. Master can go or stay. Master is free and at ease." Later, the master said, Right. You truly spoke what's in my heart." After saying this, he peacefully passed away. So accomplished ones who are free in life and death are not bound by afflictions. None of us can guarantee that this death absolutely won't befall us today. No one dares to decide this. And at the time of death, apart from the Dharma, there is no other object of refuge. Only the Dharma is truly beneficial to you. So there's a scriptural citation that says, "Remember Dharma from birth, in the mother's womb, at birth. Remember the Dharma of death." Our remembrance of the Dharma and contemplation of the Dharma actually for ordinary beings should begin when in the mother's womb. Modern society often speaks of prenatal education, family education, school education, social education. What does prenatal education mean? After conception, the mother's behavior, listening to gentle music, going to beautiful environments. Current prenatal education has very shallow meaning. Actually, true prenatal education is when, after the mother becomes pregnant, going to temples to do good deeds. The baby in your body, can I say baby, can I say it? Fetus right is beneficial for the fetus because external conditions of doing good are beneficial. Then after you come to this world, you should cultivate from childhood. Impermanence of death. At the time of death, only Dharma is beneficial. For everyone, whether old or young, death can suddenly befall you. So after we're born into this world, we must practice Dharma that is truly beneficial for the time of death. Coming to this world, what benefits death is the Dharma. Doing good deeds and accumulating merit. The Samyukta Agama also states, old age and death destroy the body and all sensations. When people age, they deteriorate, your body and all sensations. Only charitable giving and merit follow as one's provisions. The meaning is that only making offerings and other merits can accompany you throughout life and become your provisions. So the Buddha often says in the sutras, when we die, only merit can protect you. Shantideva also says, only merit can protect, yet I have never practiced. At the time of death, only practicing virtue can help and protect me. Yet when I was alive, I was daily busy with worldly trivial matters and didn't practice well. This point, modern worldly people truly don't understand. People in big cities are daily busy with small worldly matters. I saw that Taranatha once said, many people use trivial matters to delay the most meaningful practice. It's truly like this. The most meaningful practice, they don't value meaningless trivial matters, are seen as the most important things in life. Regrettably, before this, we haven't properly contemplated the notion of death, constantly supporting relatives and destroying enemies, wasting time in intoxicated living and dreaming death. Daily bustling about for housing, property, emotions, reputation, and so forth, for the happiness of relatives and friends, establishing homes and careers, actually wasting months and years with attachment, anger, and ignorance. This is indeed a very regrettable matter. In the Dhammapada, there's an excellent verse. Life wishes to end day and night, so one should strive diligently while there's time. Worldly truth is impermanent. Don't be deluded and fall into darkness. The meaning is that our life, day and night, is perishing, constantly manifesting impermanence. So now we must seize the opportunity and diligently strive to practice. In the process of practice, we must see clearly all worldly affairs. Caring for relatives and various worldly trivial matters are not permanent and have no truly real meaning. They are illusory and not worth pursuing. We must never be deluded in such darkness from darkness into darkness from one darkness entering another dark world, particularly unworthy. Now we have such an opportunity truly as spiritual friends guidance is more important than anything. I feel this way. For example, an illiterate person who never had the chance to attend school, someone raises him and then lets him go to school for his entire life. I feel this is very meaningful. Similarly, in this confused world. Originally, I would have left the human world like an illiterate person, but later I encountered the light of Dharma, the education of Dharma, letting me know what to accept and reject, what should be done, what shouldn't be done. I can completely discern for myself. So, my life should choose what's meaningful. When I die, no matter what, I feel that in my lifetime, though I also created some karma in the latter half of my life, I still practice some virtue. So when I should awaken, I have awakened. Now leaving is also fine. Whenever I go, I'll be very happy. For some practitioners, they view all worldly trivial matters very lightly, whether it's fame or status. Gaining or losing is fine. It doesn't matter. When they leave, the truly liberating virtue in their hearts has indeed accumulated tremendously. They have confidence and assurance. So we should repeatedly and deeply contemplate all these principles mentioned above. This is what's called contemplative meditation. Contemplating the common preliminaries is especially important for everyone. We repeatedly emphasize this. The reason is here. Let's stop here, okay?
Bandharangara Badna Sadarda Bandharangara Badna Sadarda Bandharangara Badna Sadarda